Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tim. On behalf of Eli and Nick, I'm going to talk to you about performance-enhancing drugs in sports, um, also known as PEDs or steroids. Now, PEDs have been around for a lot longer than we might realize, as it's become relatively new in terms of just news and things we might hear in regards to athletes and their usage of whatever PEDs are out there. It has been going on for quite some time now. Now, in regards to performance-enhancing drugs, I'll go through three specific topics. Why athletes may use PEDs, PEDs' effects on athletes as far as health, and how to combat PED usage in sports. Now, that's more specific to us in the future in regards to coaching, training. That'll be kind of applying these things, the other two topics, to how we can specifically help. Now, why use PEDs? For athletes, the most common reason would be to help increase their performance. Now, this is in large part due to a lot of athletes' identities and all of what makes them who they are in their minds would be just their sport and their performance and just the definition of them being by how well they can perform. Thus, if they can perform better, then they will do whatever it might take to be able to perform better in a lot of athletes' minds, that leading to steroid usage. Now, another relatively common area of why would be pressure from coaches and parents to win. Now, maybe in the professional realm, parents wouldn't have as much of a stake, but coaches most definitely do at all levels, whether that's t-ball or the professional, any sport. A lot of pressure in our modern era for the win at all cost mentality and just this need to win. The enjoyment is far less primary as far as goals go than it is to win. So that being said, as mentioned, even t-ball, you'll see the occasional t-ball game or little league game where you'll have the coach, not all of them, but some of them will spaz out on a little kid, maybe 8 to 10 years old. Granted, that kid probably wouldn't revert to using steroids to start hitting dingers, but the sentiment remains that the pressure from coaches and or parents is incredibly higher than it had been in years prior. Now, but certainly is common enough, especially in the professional sports world, help them heal from injuries faster. So kind of tying into bullet one, where athletes, they need that sport. It's not as much the joy to play it, there's this pressure to get back in to the lineup, to get back in and perform and contribute as fast as possible. A lot of them will resort to performance-enhancing drugs to get them to where they want to be as soon as possible. Now, PED effects on athletes' health. Puts athletes at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease. They can cause anxiety, and also they can lead to addiction to the drug being used, or even for other drugs, for that matter. Once you start PEDs, it is incredibly difficult, both physiologically and mentally, to detach yourself from them, both with this new addiction to the drug itself, as mentioned, physiologically, and just the ability to perform better than maybe you had before using such drugs. Now, this is more where the application plays in for us specifically to combat these steroids and their usage in sports. Firstly, we found that providing a supportive environment for the athlete. Now, that kind of, as mentioned before, whether it was pressure from internally from the athlete himself or coaches or parents, this can be incredibly effective to align the athlete's mental toughness, and as we mentioned before, that idea of a growth mindset where the winning and the losing is not the pinnacle of how the athlete defines themselves or their career, nor does the coach. a coach can have the growth mindset that can greatly help the athlete realize that the process, the working, all of their training is what they can find their pride in. Not as Christians, obviously, identity is a little bit of a gray area for us to say they can find their identity in their training, but it's a lot healthier to work towards a process and to find joy and pride in being able to work hard rather than wins. And a lot of the time, by such as, as we know, the Astros wasn't drugs, but it was definitely not a great way to win, to say the least. Now, educating athletes on the effects of drug abuse, this can go beyond PEDs, but in particular with PEDs, most athletes won't have careers in sports, go beyond their 30s, let alone 40s. That would be incredibly rare. So just to stress that, the momentary glitz and glam and just the accolades they might receive, even in the moment, and it's still deteriorating their health when they're taking it. But long after that, there's years and decades that the athlete has after the sport's finished and all is said and done, that they still have to live with the health effects, as mentioned, cardiovascular health, anxiety, and the potential detachment from their addiction to the performance-enhancing drugs. And lastly, teaching athletes early that using PEDs causes unfair advantages. Again, kind of tying into just the love of the game and just wanting to be able to perform, enjoy the process, enjoy the training and the working hard, without this feeling of you didn't quite earn it, in a sense, where you've had a lot of help coming from these steroids. And so just being able to teach athletes to find their pride in just them working, and winning or losing, it's almost irrelevant at that point, but just to be able to find the pride in the sport that they love and their dedication to it the right way and playing the game well. That's all we have for today. I hope this was helpful and informative. Thank you.